Okay, so now let's play around with relays. So this is where the microbit can become really, really useful because I can control objects in the world. So I am going to use a relay, and these are already pre-wired relays. Is just make sure that you have all the cables in nice and tight. So we've got these wires plugged into the little terminal block, and they're tight. And we're using pigtail plugs because they're easy instead of using alligator clips. And so again, you can get these pigtail plugs pretty inexpensively from Amazon, and they just go together. They're the same things that people use for cameras or wiring or anything like that. And we're going to get this fan to come on and off based upon the temperature or humidity. It doesn't really matter, but I'm going to do it with temperature. And what we're going to do is we are going to wire my relay in. Okay, the relays are usually like $1.50 to $2. They're pretty inexpensive. And I'm going to put this relay into my whole system that still exists here. And I'm going to plug it into P2. All right. And then what we have to do is the relay doesn't draw power through the pins. Okay. That would be great if it did. It just doesn't. So you have to take another pigtail power and plug it in. So this is attached to a USB. It's 5 volts. All right. And then your fan basically is attached with another pigtail, and it just plugs into the relay there. Okay. So now I've got my relay plugged into my P2. It's attached with the 4-pin cable. I've got a power coming in to my relay, and that's what it's going to give the power to the fan. Right. So in this way of thinking about a relay is nothing more than a switch. When the relay is on, it's going to close a little piece of metal and complete the circuit. When it's off, that circuit is open. Okay. And so what we're going to do is we are going to send an on or off signal to this pin number. And how you do that is through the pins block, which is down past advanced, and it's actually down toward the end there at pins. And what we're going to do is we're going to create another function that's going to control my relays. So I'm going to go to functions here. I'm going to make a function, and I'm going to call this control fan, or fans if you have multiple fans. So let's just say control fan. You could call it control airflow, control air movement, anything that you would like, kind of as long as the function as function's name describes what that function is going to do. So there I've got my control fan. I'm going to move these guys a little bit out of the way so we can zoom in on my control fan a bit. Okay. So to do this, I want to have a condition set up where if it's too hot, I want my fan to come on. If it's too cold, I want the fan to go off. Okay. So let's go over here to logic. That's where my if-then statement lives. I'm going to drag an if true block over. And now, again, you might notice that there's a similar pattern. It is really not that different than what we've done over here to control my LED strip. It's going to be very, very similar, in fact. I'm going to go back to my logic. I am going to drag in an inequality. And what I want to do is compare temperature to some number. So I'm going to go back to my variables. I've got my air temp variable. And I want to know if my air temp, and I'm going to make a number here. Let's say if it's over 85, I'm going to want my fan to come on, which means I'm going to send a signal of 1 to P1. So to do that, I'm going to scroll down under Advanced, and I'm going to click on Pins. And again, remember there's this little arrow here by Advanced, so if you click that, it opens up these new sets of blocks. I'm going to go to Pins. I'm going to digitally write a pin, because now we're in binary land. The pins are on and off, which is a 1 or a 0. So that's digital. All right, so I've got my digital write pin. I've plugged in my relay on P2, so I have to make sure I'm sending the signal to the right pin. And I only have option of 0 or 1, right? Because it's binary. 1 is on, 0 is off. So if my temperature is greater than 85, turn my pin on. If it's not, the else statement, I'm going to copy my digital write pin block. I'm going to write a signal of 0 to that pin. Okay? And that's going to allow my relay to go off if it's not too hot. Okay? And as always, we have to remember under functions, we have to call this function and put it in the forever loop. And so the forever loop runs from top to bottom. So it's going to get the data, show the data, do the LED strip and fan. I'm actually going to move my fan above it just because I want to have the fan action happen before the LED strip. It doesn't really matter, but just for the purposes of this video, I think it'd be nice to have the fan come on and then have our LED strip show up and see if we've got the settings right. Okay, so let's plug in my microbit into my cable so I can have it download the file. So I'm going to click download. Alright, it should know. Alright, let's try it again. Oh, yep, there, it connected. Okay, so now my file is on here. I am going to now plug in and let's see what my temperature is. Right now, my temperature says, let me unplug that. Okay, my temperature says it's 84 degrees. Okay, so I'm just going to reset everything here. My screen went a little hokey, so if your screen ever gets a little funny, you just reboot everything, plug it back in. The program is already on the microbit. There, now I can read it again. Temperature of 84. Okay, so I want to get out of this. Alright, yep, I know you're not connected. Let me just download as a file to get out of that. And I'm going to say don't show this again. Okay, so I've set it to 85, so that's my air temp. Notice my fan is off as it should be. Okay, so let's take my temperature, warm it up. It is now 92 degrees, and look at there, I have a moving fan. Okay, and you can have my fan move, and you can actually hear it when you. Yep, so now it's moving. So now if I cool down my air temperature and get it back below 85 degrees, let's see where am I at right now. I'm at 89. It might take a little bit of effort to get it back down to 85 degrees. Alright, so my fan's going to be on for a bit. I'll just set it here and have it blow on my air temperature sensor here. And see if it helps cool down my air. Alright, I'm down to 88. So this will take a while. But once it drops below 85, my fan will turn off. Okay. Now, just like before, if I want to go over here, I've got this show temperature function. But remember, I also had this control LED strip function. Okay. And this was an or an and. I can do the same thing here and use both temperature and humidity again. So if I want to keep my air temp, but I want to have the fan come on if the temperature is too high or the humidity is too high, I do something very similar to what I did to control my LED strip. I'm going to go back to my logic. I am going to do a and statement here, because now I'm going to compare and variables over on the left side and variables on the right side. One of these is going to be my air temperature. Okay. I'm going to copy and paste that block right in. Okay. But now I'm going to change my air temperature to humidity, and I'm going to make that 60. Okay. So now I want my fan to come on if the temperature is over 85 and the humidity is 60. Okay, and so the temperature must have cooled down as my fan is off. Yep, it is now 85. Yep, because notice I've got a greater, not greater than, equal 85. Okay, so let's download this and see if this works. But I need to connect my microbit. Let's connect up my bit. There it is, reconnecting. Perfect. Now let's download my file. Excellent. I'm going to unplug my microbit. Let's plug it into here. Alright. And so my condition is air is 85, humidity is 60. Right now I'm at air temp of 85, humidity is 56. So it's probably not going to take a lot here to get my fan to come on. There we go. So now my humidity is 80 and my now it's 84 and the air temp is 91. So, and my fan comes on. Okay. It's pretty cool.